Hi, my name's Katrina Valkenburg Davies, and I decided to do my Genius Hour project on yoga in the choral setting. I want to start off by saying I don't have any formal yoga training, but I love yoga. I love hot yoga, I love regular yoga, I've gone to lots of different studios, kind of just been through the whole gamut. And so I kind of did a combination of just good stretches that I know for choir, and then also was incorporating specific yoga stretches and then tried to get a flow going on with it. Some things that made me interested about this project was I've always wanted to know more specifically how kids feel about stretching, and being more methodical about actually gathering data was what one of my goals was for this. So I started out by doing a warm-up stretch interview, and some of the things that I covered with it was just asking them an initial question: why do you think we stretch during the first part of class? And I was pretty pleased to see the answers with this. Most of them saying things about it gets them ready to sing, it wakes up their body, gets oxygen flowing, which we have discussed that at the very beginning of the school year. So it was good to hear that they've retained that throughout the year and see the purpose behind it. And then again, with the initial interview, I also asked them, how do you usually feel before class begins? So on my first thing that I did with this, it was just a multiple choice selection and then one that said other at the end so they could fill it in. And I got a wide variety of answers from that one. The next question I said is, how do you feel after stretching? So I just had them sit down, take this quick little informative thing on the Chromebook. So they just said, how do you feel before? How do you feel after? Asked them, do you like stretching? Asked them, do you prefer the lights on or dimmed? And how do you feel when you leave choir? So that was all the questions in my initial form for the kids. Some of the responses that I got when asking them about why they stretch before class was things like, so that we are focused and awake for the class. Or, I think it's so we can stay up in the morning, or something like to feel like refreshed, and also just like a nice warm up because we begin, I guess. So of course you're hearing responses that are very fitting of middle schoolers. And then another kid says, I think we stretch so we can relieve our stress. Some initial responses was to warm up our bodies and our voice, which I spent a lot of time talking about how you use your whole body to sing correctly. So that was encouraging to hear that response. Another kid said, I think we do stretches before class to help wake us up and to help warm up our body for singing. A centered body helps with singing and it helps with balance. One of the things that I found really encouraging was on the very first day when I asked them, how do you usually feel before class begins? Out of 107 students, 52.3 selected tired. When I did this, there was that other option I had talked about. So aside from the options that they were given, kids wrote things like not motivated, no particular way, on some days tired, annoyed. I also got, before we stretch, I feel tired and stressed. It depends on the day. So different days, I feel these different things you listed. Tight and sore. You can see them stretching here. Some additional options that they also wrote was hyper. Some of them like to mix answers, tired and stressed, tense. And so as far as being super scientific about it, if I were to only give them certain options, it would probably be more accurate, but it was also really interesting to give them the other option where they filled in the answer. And sometimes it was things that I was like, oh, maybe I should go investigate what's going on with that kid. One of the questions was, do you like stretching in class? And again, out of the 107 students that took this assessment, 94.4% said yes. And then 6 kids said no. And I knew those kids, the ones that would be the no responders, but it's just interesting to see it put in a graph that way. And I'm wondering if that has softened from the beginning of the year. If I were to document it all year long, if there's been growth in that area. And the other thing I wonder is why. So I wish I would have, in my initial interview, asked them, if no, why? Just to find out a little bit more about them. How do you feel after stretching? So from that 54.4% that said tired, after stretching, 38.3 said relaxed, and 29.9 said awake, and 7.5 responded tired. So you can definitely see a change in response from them. So what the kids ended up doing after the initial interview was each day they would get their Chromebook and they would find the form for the day that was labeled Tuesday stretch, Wednesday stretch, and so forth. And there was just 2 questions. So they'd come into class, they'd answer the first question, how do you feel before stretching? There was the multiple choice options, but this time they could actually select more than one box. So if they were tired, they could click tired. And if they were stressed, they could also click that as well. And then they still had the option for the other, which again was kind of a can of worms, but still interesting at the same time. On this particular day, 50 kids responded that they felt tired, and 31 said that they felt stressed. And then you just see a variation of those responses, like exhausted, angry, fidgety. And then the 2 different kids that wrote scared, I actually went and investigated later on about why they were feeling scared. So it's intriguing because it's kind of a way to catch kids that might fall through the cracks otherwise, that when you ask them, how are you doing? Oh, good. You know, the simple pleasantries. This actually helped me kind of figure out how they're doing. How do you now feel? Almost a complete reverse. So 47 of them said that they felt relaxed. 31 responded awake. And then 8 said tired. And then of course you do get some that say the same, but here we see one kid wrote the same but less. This was on a Thursday, I believe. How do you feel right now before class begins? And again, you see the majority of the class is responding that they feel tired. Many are saying that they feel stressed, and you don't see a lot that are really ready to learn yet. You also see in this particular day, tense, I feel a little shaky, tired, tight, stiff, and sore. And this happened to be the day after track practice had started. So it makes sense that that was their response. So to finish up, but going back to that initial interview, how do you feel when you leave choir? I just wanted to see how they felt, if they did feel a difference. A lot of them wrote basically that they were excited for the rest of the day. Some kids did write things like sad because science is next or whatever. So if they had a class that they had some anxiety about, or the rigor, was intimidating to them, you'd see it in their responses. But overall, like on the bottom here, it says, I feel awake and ready to start my day. Having choir in the mornings has really helped me because singing helps with my anxiety, and it's really helping with many things, which is why I'm trying out for high school choir. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Here's another one. Let's see different responses. So going back to why I wanted to do this, it makes me think of a student that I have who has some severe anxiety, and she likes a rigidity to her schedule. And there was one day that I just was tired and we had a lot on our plate, and I was like, oh, we just better dive into singing songs. And so I skipped doing stretching that day, and she fell apart. She had trouble in choir with behavior, and it just followed her throughout the rest of the day. And I had heard about it in the teacher's cafeteria about how she was having a really hard day, and I thought, ooh, I wonder if it's my fault. And the next day she came to choir and she's like, can we please stretch? Because it really threw me off when we didn't stretch yesterday. And I just thought, I made a mental note of that and thought, how can I do things to help my students be more successful in choir? And I feel like this is a step in the right direction, and it was very informative for me.